Some ghosts just won't stay buried. Alex Carter, known as the Phantom, was the most lethal sniper in American military history with a classified kill count. He vanished without a trace, leaving his daughter Maya to believe he had died. His lethal skills made him both a formidable weapon and a significant liability. Meanwhile, Ethan Brooks made a critical mistake. A scholarship student from a wealthy family, caught in a corrupt system designed to crush anyone who dared to stand against it. But they couldn't see the military precision behind every piece of evidence she collected, the strategic awareness in her quiet resistance, and the warrior spirit flowing through her veins. As the corrupt forces in Riverview began to falter and powerful families scrambled for cover, the truth emerged. Maya Carter was never fighting alone against overwhelming odds. She was awakening a force even the government feared to confront. The yellow school bus came to a stop in front of Riverview Academy. Maya stepped off, her heart racing. Her worn sneakers hit the shiny marble floor, mirroring her anxious but determined expression. Riverview Academy was known as the most elite school in the area, catering to the children of wealthy and powerful families. The grand buildings, designed in classic style, were draped with vibrant ivy, giving off an air of aristocratic beauty. But behind that facade lurked invisible barriers and deep-rooted biases, protected by a potent system of wealth and influence. As Maya walked through the curious, judgmental gazes of her fellow students, she felt like an outsider, the only black girl in this prestigious circle. Holding on to her composure, Maya gently clutched the silver locket of her late grandmother, who always claimed it would guide her through hardship. Her grandmother, a resilient woman who fought against racial injustice in the South, had told her, "You are stronger than anyone who tries to bring you down." With that thought in mind, she walked straight toward the main hall, her footsteps echoing uncomfortably in the expansive space. Other students, dressed in neat uniforms, gathered in clusters, eyeing her with pity and suspicion. Ignoring their stares, Maya headed to the principal's office to finalize her enrollment. Principal Derek Lawson, a stern, middle-aged man, scrutinized her before reluctantly extending his hand. "Welcome to Riverview," he said, his voice devoid of warmth. "Miss Carter, I hope you quickly adapt to our high expectations." She smiled, politely, her voice full of determination. "Thank you, sir. I will do my best." As she exited the office, she accidentally bumped into a group of students loitering by the door. A mocking voice broke the silence. "So, this is the scholarship girl they had to admit." Maya looked up to see a tall boy with sandy hair and icy blue eyes radiating arrogance. That was Ethan Brooks, the mayor's son, the most influential boy in town. He stood there as if the world revolved around him, sneering with disdain. Ethan continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I didn't know. This school had a charity program now." His friends erupted into laughter, shattering Maya's confidence, but she remained silent. Instead, she held her head high, her deep brown eyes locking onto Ethan's cold, challenging gaze, a silence more powerful than any retort. Maya walked past them, leaving behind an uncomfortable hush. For a moment, Ethan frowned, irritated that she hadn't shown the weakness he expected. Instead, she had given him a strong and proud look, something that baffled him. Maya's first day at Riverview had just begun, but an invisible battle had already started. She understood that to survive here, she needed to be even stronger, more resilient, and ready to face challenges greater than she'd ever anticipated. Deep down, she knew one thing. Riverview wasn't just a school. It was a battlefield where she had to fight to protect her dignity, her future, and herself. When the classroom door closed behind her, she took her seat, her gaze resolute, prepared to confront whatever lay ahead. As the door shut, down the corridor, Ethan Brooks leaned against the wall, his sharp blue eyes still fixed on Maya's silhouette. In his mind, what had just happened was not just the arrival of a new student, it was a direct challenge to the unassailable power he had always held dear. Born and raised in a prominent family, Ethan was used to being treated differently. His father, Richard Brooks, had long served as mayor and controlled much of the local economy through lucrative contracts and a vast network of connections. Ethan understood early on that the strong ruled the game, and everyone feared the Brooks family. He exploited that fear with ruthless precision. At Riverview, no one had ever dared to challenge Ethan until Maya Carter looked him in the eye with determination. That gaze, the proud, powerful silence, stirred something cold within him, like a smoldering fire waiting for a chance to ignite. "Who does that girl think she is?" Ethan sneered, just loud enough for his friends to hear. "She's here on a scholarship, but acts like she owns the place." Beside him, Jake Evans, the son of the largest real estate mogul in town, laughed in agreement. "She honestly thinks she's on the same level as us, Ethan. Maybe we should help her realize her true place." Ethan smirked, a cold grin spreading across his face. "Don't worry, I'll make sure she learns that soon enough." Later that afternoon, in the school cafeteria, Maya sat in a quiet corner, eating the modest lunch she had packed from home. Before long, she felt an unusual silence around her. Ethan strolled in, flanked by Jake and two other friends, David and Max, sons of the local judge and police chief, respectively. Together, they formed an imposing wall of intimidation. Ethan leaned on the edge of her table, his gaze landing on Maya's simple lunchbox. "Why don't you try the gourmet chicken on today's menu? Oh, wait, I forgot. Maybe you can't afford it." Short bursts of laughter followed his taunts. Maya looked up, her eyes silent but filled with strength and defiance. Ethan abruptly realized he had failed to break her spirit. Frustrated by her unnerving calmness, he swiped his hand across Maya's lunchbox, sending it crashing to the floor, food spilling everywhere. The cafeteria fell silent, all eyes on Maya. "You might want to learn some manners while you're allowed to be here," Ethan said softly, just loud enough to be heard, his voice filled with challenge. "Remember this lesson." The group turned and walked away, leaving Maya alone in the silence, surrounded by pitying stares. She bent down to gather the scattered food, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, but she refused to cry. Instead, a spark of anger ignited within her. Maya vowed she would never let Ethan win. Meanwhile, at the far end of the cafeteria, a small girl with light brown hair approached. Zoe Taylor, the daughter of the school janitor, bent down to help. "Don't mind them," Zoe said softly, her eyes filled with sympathy. "Ethan thinks he can do whatever he wants just because he's a Brooks." Maya took a deep breath, grateful for her new friend's kindness. "I'm not afraid of him." Zoe offered a soft, encouraging smile. "That's exactly why he'll never leave you alone." From across the cafeteria, Ethan watched the exchange with dark, icy eyes. In his mind, Maya Carter was not just another student, she was a threat that needed to be eliminated. He was determined to use every ounce of his power and influence to show this new girl her place, that this was his school, his territory, where no one dared defy the name Brooks. And so, a devious plan began to take shape in Ethan's mind. A campaign of sophisticated bullying, an invisible battle where honor and dignity would be violently challenged. But there was one thing Ethan Brooks could not foresee. Behind this seemingly weak scholarship girl lay a significant secret, a ghost from the past, ready to awaken whenever his daughter was in danger. Ethan's bullying plan wasted no time. By the very next morning, it began silently and mercilessly. As the sun rose behind the towering buildings of Riverview Academy, the crowded hallway fell into an eerie silence. No one dared speak as Maya's locker appeared adorned with offensive phrases painted in bright red. like blood dripping down the metal door. Maya stood frozen before her locker, the humiliation engulfing her. Indifferent glances flickered quickly around her, and even teachers passing by pretended not to see. No one helped her, no one protected her, because everyone understood that messing with Maya was a direct challenge to the Brooks family. At the far end of the hall, Ethan quietly observed Maya's reaction, his face expressionless, his cold eyes gleaming with satisfaction. He had grown accustomed to winning through silence and power, used to getting what he wanted without ever getting his hands dirty. This was just the first step in a well-laid plan designed to crush the girl who dared oppose him. But Maya, though hurt, did not cry. She slowly opened her locker, pulling out the few books that hadn't been destroyed. Beside her, Zoe stood, watching with helpless eyes. "You have to report this to the principal, Maya. You can't just let this slide," Zoe whispered. Maya smiled bitterly. "Do you think they'll do anything?" Zoe lowered her head, knowing Maya was right. That harsh truth was quickly confirmed when Maya went to Principal Lawson's office to file her complaint. She was met with indifferent, dismissive words and flimsy excuses, as if they had been pre-programmed. "Miss Carter, perhaps it was just a harmless prank from the students. Please don't make a big deal out of it." After leaving the office, Principal Lawson immediately called Mayor Brooks, his voice trembling with flattery. "Mr. Brooks, I've handled it as per your instructions. Rest assured, no one on the school board dared interfere with what Ethan had set in motion." They all understood that Riverview Academy was no longer just a school. It was a symbol, a stronghold where the power of the Brooks family was deeply entrenched. In the days that followed, Ethan's bullying escalated dramatically. Maya found herself repeatedly facing subtle but humiliating acts of violence. Her textbooks were torn apart, filled with mocking insults. During gym class, her sports uniform was taken, forcing her to endure the prying and mocking eyes of her classmates while wearing something inappropriate. Each of these small actions had been carefully calculated by Ethan, ensuring he would never be directly linked to them. The climax of the bullying came on a Friday afternoon during advanced chemistry class. As Maya was about to finish the experiment she had been working on all week, Ethan suddenly shoved into her, knocking a bottle of corrosive chemicals onto her entire setup. Maya panicked, watching her hard work vanish in an instant. Ms. Henderson, the teacher, clearly saw what had happened, but merely sighed, shaking her head gently. "Miss Carter, you need to be more careful. I'm afraid I can't give you credit for this assignment." Her words struck Maya's last hope for justice and fairness at Riverview. She glared at Ethan, her eyes filled with anger and bitterness, but he only responded with a cold, indifferent smile, the kind that sent chills down her spine. After class, Zoe quietly walked beside her friend, heartbroken, whispering, "Maya, this might just be the beginning. Ethan won't stop until you give in." But Maya shook her head firmly, her voice resolute. "I will never bow to him. Even if I have to fight the entire school, I won't give up." That evening, when Ethan returned to his family's lavish mansion, Mayor Richard Brooks was already waiting in his office, his presence commanding and cold. He looked at Ethan slowly. "You're doing well, but be more careful. Riverview is my political future, and our family's reputation cannot be affected." Ethan sat down opposite his father, his eyes as cold as the man before him. "Don't worry, Dad. I know what I'm doing. No one will dare stand by that girl. The power is still in our hands." Mayor Brooks smiled, pleased, his gaze filled with calculation and coldness. He knew his son would succeed, and he understood Riverview would remain under the absolute control of the Brooks family. However, neither Ethan nor his father knew that across town, in her small room, Maya was gripping the silver locket of her late grandmother, her eyes flickering with fierce determination. She didn't know how to fight like Ethan, but she had courage and integrity, and she knew that no matter what, she would never surrender. For deep within Maya's childhood memories lay a faint but powerful figure, a mysterious man her mother had always avoided mentioning, a father she had never truly understood, but one who would soon become the key to changing the battle's entire course. In her small room, the dim light from the old desk lamp cast a shadow over Maya's tense face as she silently listened to the sound of her mother's footsteps returning home. But today, those footsteps weren't as steady and calm as usual. They were shaky and heavy, as if trying to hide a profound collapse. The door opened gently, and Laura Carter walked in, her expression distant, still wearing her crumpled nurse's outfit, not even bothering to take it off. Maya quickly stood up, concern filling her face as she looked at her mother. "Mom, what's wrong? Something happened, didn't it?" Laura stared at her daughter for a moment, as if searching for the right words. Then she sat down on a small chair, her shoulders slumping with exhaustion. "The hospital just called. They told me I don't need to come in anymore. They said it was due to budget cuts, but you know, this is the pressure from the Brooks family." Maya felt her heart constrict. Ethan and his father had taken their cruelty beyond the school, infiltrating her small family. She knelt beside her. "Mother," her voice trembling but resolute. "Mom, don't worry. We'll find a way. You've always taught me to be strong, right?" Laura gently took Maya's hand, trying to smile, but tears began to spill helplessly from her eyes. "I'm sorry, sweetie. I wish your father were still here." At those words, Laura suddenly fell silent, her face changing as though she had touched on a long-buried memory. Maya was taken aback by her mother's strange reaction. "Mom," she spoke softly, "why do you always avoid talking about Dad? Who is he really, and why won't you tell me the truth about him?" Laura took a deep breath, her gaze drifting far away. "Maya, I've only been trying to protect you. There are truths that are better left unknown." But this time, Maya was determined not to let go so easily. She spoke gently but firmly. "I've had enough, Mom. Please tell me the truth. Who is my father?" Laura hesitated for a long time, but eventually stood up and opened a small cabinet where she kept the most important mementos. From it, she pulled out a yellowed envelope and placed it trembling into Maya's hands. "Read this, and you'll understand. But I warn you, there are some doors once opened. They can never be closed." Maya's heart raced as she slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a faded photo and an official letter from the U.S. Department of Defense. In the photo was a young man with a rugged face, piercing eyes full of cold intensity, dressed in a perfectly tailored military uniform. Maya's hands shook as she realized this was her father, the man she had never known. She hurriedly read the letter inside. "Dear Mrs. Laura Carter, we regret to inform you that your husband, Sergeant Alex Carter, has been confirmed as missing in action during a classified mission. Sergeant Carter was an exceptional member of the Special Forces, with contributions we cannot publicly disclose. He was widely known in the military under the codename The Phantom, the most skilled and feared sniper in U.S. military history. We deeply regret this loss and will forever value his extraordinary contributions. The details of the mission and the reason for his disappearance remain classified and cannot be disclosed. We ask that you keep this information confidential to ensure the safety of you and your family. Sincerely, U.S. Department of Defense." Maya froze, her hands trembling as her mind spun from the earth-shattering secrets just unveiled. Her father was not the ordinary man who had abandoned them, as she had always believed. He was a living legend, one of the most notorious snipers, feared by the underground world known as the Phantom. The fragmented memories now pieced together, and Maya understood why her mother had always avoided questions about her father. But deep down, a bigger question echoed, urging her forward. Was her father truly missing, or was he out there somewhere still alive? "Mom," Maya spoke, her voice filled with conviction. "Is Dad still alive? If he's out there, he could help us." Laura shook her head sorrowfully. "I don't know, but I'm afraid that looking for him could bring great danger to us." Maya stared deeply into her mother's eyes, her voice unwavering. "We're at the end of our rope, Mom. If Dad is the man they talk about in that letter, then he could help us. At least I need to know who my father truly is." Laura looked up at her daughter, seeing the strong resolve in her eyes. In that moment, she realized just how much Maya had grown, much stronger than she had ever imagined. Once again, Laura tightened her grip on her daughter's hand, speaking softly but seriously. "If you've made up your mind, I won't stop you. But remember, sweetie, the man you're looking for, your father, he's not just a legend. He's a ghost, someone who once instilled terror, and not everyone is ready to face him." Maya took the photo of her father, her eyes filled with determination as she gazed deeply into his cold, stern face. Now she understood clearly. This fight wasn't just personal anymore. To reclaim justice and honor, she needed to awaken a legend that had been lying dormant for far too long. A man whose very name could make enemies tremble. That night, after her mother had fallen deeply asleep in exhaustion and unease, Maya remained at her desk, her eyes fixed intently on the photo of the man in uniform, the father she had never met. Under the dim yellow light, his face seemed strangely alive, as if those cold, piercing eyes were looking directly at her, penetrating her soul with the power of a legend. On the desk, her old laptop displayed search results Maya had just run. Though information about the Phantom had been nearly wiped clean from public records, with a little patience and some luck, she had pieced together small fragments to form a picture of her father. The small text on the screen sent a chill down her spine. Alex Carter, codename the Phantom, was a member of the Green Beret Special Forces. He was regarded as the most skilled and deadly sniper in U.S. military history. The missions he undertook were highly classified, with most details never publicly released. Notably, Carter was famous for his ability to approach and retreat from targets, mysteriously vanishing without a trace, like a ghost. That's why he was given the codename the Phantom, meaning death. Maya sighed, a mix of pride and fear swelling within her as she learned the truth about her father. He was not the ordinary man she had imagined as a child. He was a living legend, a haunting ghost who had spread fear across battlefields. She suddenly remembered her mother's words, "Some doors once opened can never be closed." At this moment, Maya understood those words more than ever. Across town, in his luxurious office, Richard Brooks sat quietly before his computer screen. The latest reports from his subordinates displeased him. It seemed that Laura Carter and her daughter had yet to bow down and submit. But he assured himself that this would not go any further. Mayor Brooks picked up the phone, his voice cold and firm. "Make them understand that going against us is a serious mistake, but don't make it too obvious. It needs to be subtle, yet strong enough to make them fear us." A brief confirmation came from the other end of the line. Brooks leaned back in his chair, satisfied as he looked out the window, confident that no one in this town could withstand his power once he set his sights on them. Meanwhile, at the Carter home, Maya was still deep in her search. Suddenly, she stumbled upon a short video posted on a secret military forum titled "The Secret Triumph of the Phantom." She clicked on the video. The screen displayed shaky footage, accompanied by the faint but clear sound of a soldier's voice recounting, "I once saw Carter take out a group of insurgents in the blink of an eye. He moved like a shadow, almost invisible in the darkness. We called him the Phantom because when Carter appeared, the enemy was already dead before they even knew what hit them. But the scariest part wasn't his extraordinary marksmanship. It was how he appeared and disappeared without a trace, without a sound. The video ended, and Maya's heart raced. She looked at her father's face in the photo, his eyes now bearing an inexplicable coldness. She silently wondered whether the man who had once terrified the world was still alive, and, if he was out there, would he be ready to step forward and protect her? Just then, the phone rang, interrupting Maya's thoughts. The screen displayed an unfamiliar number. Hesitating for a moment, she answered, her voice cautious. "Who is this?" A deep, powerful voice responded on the other end, filled with both allure and mystery. "Maya Carter, is it?" "Yes, it's me. I'm someone who fought alongside your father on the battlefield. If you've uncovered the truth about him, I think it's time for us to meet." Maya's heart almost stopped in surprise. "You know my father? Is he still alive?" There was a brief silence on the other end before the voice answered cryptically, "Some answers can't be given over the phone. If you truly want to know, meet me tomorrow at the cafe near the school at 4 p.m. Don't speak about this to anyone. The Brooks family has eyes and ears everywhere." The call ended abruptly, leaving Maya stunned. She stared at the phone, her mind spinning with a flood of questions. Outside, the night had fallen cold. Meanwhile, in the Brooks mansion, Ethan sat comfortably, his eyes as cold and sharp as an eagle's. He was confident that everything was under control, but what he didn't know was that at this very moment, a mysterious man was on his way back, ready to undo everything the Brooks family had built. The following afternoon, just as Maya was leaving class, she sensed the atmosphere around her grow strange and heavy. Whispers and furtive glances echoed down the hallway, creating an invisible pressure surrounding her. Her instincts told her that something terrible was about to happen. Before she could react, Ethan Brooks appeared, blocking her path with a cold, mocking smile. Surrounding him were Jake, David, and Max, all wearing faces full of malicious enjoyment. "Hello, scholarship girl," Ethan spoke, his voice dripping with provocation. "I hear you're looking into things you shouldn't. You don't seem to understand the consequences of going against the Brooks family." Before Maya could respond, David and Max grabbed her by the arms. Before she could scream, Ethan yanked her bag from her grasp and threw it forcefully to the floor. The hallway fell into a chilling silence, all eyes on the scene, yet no one dared to intervene. "Let's see what this poor girl's bag holds," Ethan announced loudly, opening her bag and tossing everything onto the floor. Textbooks, notebooks, and even the precious photo of her father, all scattered on the ground. Maya screamed in despair. "Stop! You have no right to do this!" But Ethan only responded with a cold, ruthless laugh. He tore the photo of her father right in front of her, the pieces of paper falling to the ground like her heart breaking apart. "How pathetic, Carter," Ethan whispered close to her ear, his voice like a knife cutting through. "Your father abandoned you, and now you have no one to protect you here." She struggled, but David and Max held her too tightly. Ethan continued, his eyes gleaming with cruelty. "From now on, you'd better remember your place. Don't try to dig into things you have no business knowing." He nodded sharply, and David and Max released her, causing her to collapse to the floor. The other students quietly walked away, none daring to meet her eyes. That evening, Laura Carter was determined to speak out at the school board meeting. She entered the room, her small frame filled with the strength of a determined mother. Laura laid out the events clearly, recounting the cruel actions that Ethan and his friends had inflicted on her daughter. However, as soon as Laura finished speaking, Principal Lawson immediately stood up, his eyes full of disdain and challenge. "Mrs. Carter, We've investigated, and unfortunately, there's no evidence to support your claims. Perhaps your daughter is just causing trouble for attention." The others on the school board nodded in agreement, their gazes cold as they sided with the power of the Brooks family. Laura stood up in anger, her voice trembling but resolute. "You can't deny your responsibility. You all know what's happening. But you're choosing to turn a blind eye out of fear of power. This is a school, not a private playground for the Brooks family." But her courageous words were immediately cut off by a cold voice from the door. "Mrs. Carter, you're making very serious accusations." All eyes turned to the door. Mayor Richard Brooks stood there, his presence commanding, his cold, sharp gaze cutting through the room. He stepped forward slowly, each step more imposing than the last. "Do you really think that the words of a mere laborer like you can stand against my family's honor?" He looked at Laura with eyes as cold as ice, his voice sharp, slicing through her dignity. "Or do you want to lose something else besides your job at the hospital?" Laura choked on her words, feeling the humiliation and helplessness rise in her throat. She looked around the room, hoping to find support, but all the people present lowered their heads in silence, none daring to meet her gaze. In the end, Laura understood that all her efforts to speak out were futile against the overwhelming power of the Brooks family. She silently left the meeting room, her eyes filled with tears, but she wouldn't allow herself to cry in front of them. In their small room, Maya sat beside her mother, her face pale with pain and anger. When her mother returned, she didn't say a word, just gently hugged her tightly, as though trying to shield and protect her from the harsh world outside. Maya spoke through her trembling voice. "Mom, maybe we've reached the breaking point. If Dad is alive, we need to find him. I believe he'll help us." Laura remained silent for a long time before speaking, her voice filled with despair, but also with a faint glimmer of hope. "I know, but sweetheart, your father is not an ordinary man. If we call him back, we don't know what will happen next." Maya looked up at her mother, her eyes bright and resolute. "Mom, no matter what, I won't back down anymore. It's time for the Brooks family to understand they can't bully us forever." She grasped the silver necklace from her grandmother, clutching it tightly in her hand, feeling the strength and determination surge fiercely in her heart. Maya knew she had surpassed her limits of endurance, but now she no longer feared. She had made up her mind. It was time to awaken a force far more terrifying than the power of the Brooks family. The atmosphere in the small room became suffocating. As night fell, the weak light from the desk lamp flickered over Maya's exhausted and tense face. In her hand, the phone trembled slightly, the screen displaying chilling threat messages from an unfamiliar number. "If you and your mother want to live in peace, it's best you know your place and leave this town immediately." Maya exhaled sharply, her heart feeling as though it might stop. She knew exactly who was behind these threats, Ethan Brooks and his father. The Brooks family never stopped until they got what they wanted, and this time they had truly crossed the line of her endurance. As Maya was still processing the shock, Laura entered the room, her face full of concern. Upon seeing the phone in Maya's hand, she immediately understood what had just happened. "Maya, are they threatening you again?" Laura's voice trembled, full of helplessness. Maya looked deep into her mother's eyes, no longer able to lie. "Mom, they're not stopping. This time, they said they'll hurt us for real if we don't leave." Laura gripped her daughter's hand tightly, her voice choked, but trying to sound strong. "I'll do anything to protect you, but what can we do when the whole town is afraid of the Brooks family?" In that moment, Maya's gaze accidentally landed on her father's old file on the desk. A daring thought flashed in her mind, filled with both risk and hope. Maya reached for the file, flipping through the yellowed pages, and found a small phone number noted at the bottom, with a short, handwritten note beneath it. "Only call in case of extreme emergency." Maya looked up at her mother, her eyes full of determination. "Mom, maybe this is the time Dad wanted us to call this number. He told you that, didn't he?" Laura's face briefly showed fear when she saw the familiar number, her voice shaking with hesitation. "But if you call, I'm afraid we'll never return to a peaceful life again." Maya shook her head firmly. "That man is not an ordinary person, Mom. Our peaceful life was destroyed long ago. We have no other choice." Without waiting for her mother to object further, she quickly dialed the number into the phone. Her heart raced, each ring sounding like a small bomb exploding in her chest. After a few seconds of tense waiting, a click came from the other end, followed by heavy silence. A cold, deep and sharp voice spoke. "Who's calling this number?" Maya felt her breath catch in her throat, but she forced herself to speak clearly. "Father, it's me, Maya Carter." There was a long silence on the other end, only the faint sound of breathing, as though the man was carefully considering something. Finally he spoke, his voice still cold but softening slightly when he recognized her. "Maya, what's happening that you're calling me?" "Mom and I are in danger. The Brooks family, the mayor, Richard Brooks and his son, they're threatening us and want to hurt us. We don't know what to do anymore, Dad." Another short but heavy silence followed. Then the man's voice came back, firm but concise, just like a legendary special forces operative preparing for battle. "Are you sure about this?" Maya didn't hesitate for a second. "Yes, Dad. We have no way out now." The man took a deep breath, his voice now colder and more decisive, just like a legendary sniper preparing for battle. "Stay calm and listen to me. Tomorrow I'll be there. Until I arrive, don't trust anyone except your mother. Act like everything is normal, but always stay alert. I'll handle this." Maya felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety swell in her chest, her eyes brimming with tears of emotion. "Dad, you're really alive. You can help us, can't you?" There was a brief silence on the other end before the man's cold but commanding voice came through clearly. "Maya, remember this. I will do whatever is necessary to protect you and your mother. No one is allowed to harm our family. I will come and put an end to this." The call ended abruptly, leaving a strange strength in Maya's heart. Laura, though anxious, also felt a glimmer of real hope, her eyes filled with both fear and trust as she looked at her daughter. "Sweetheart, I just hope we've made the right decision." Maya squeezed her mother's hand, her eyes now filled with a new sense of hope. "I believe in Dad, Mom. No matter who he is or what he's done, he's still my father, and right now we need him more than ever." On the other side of town, in the vast Brooks estate, Ethan sat relaxed on the sofa with a phone in hand and a smug smile on his face. He had no idea that at this moment he thought he had everything under control. A mysterious man was on his way back, ready to undo everything the Brooks family had built. The next morning, the sky over Riverview was a cold grey, as if foreshadowing that something was about to happen. Maya arrived at school, maintaining as calm an exterior as she could, but inside, her emotions were in turmoil after the fateful phone call with her mysterious father. None of the students noticed the change in her gaze, but just a few steps away, Ethan Brooks kept his eyes on her, a self-satisfied look on his face, like a hunter watching his favorite prey. "Looks like she's finally learned her lesson," Ethan said quietly to Jake as they stood near the classroom hallway. Jake chuckled, his eyes full of contempt. "She better have, or she'll find out what real suffering feels like." Ethan smiled coldly, full of confidence. But what he didn't know this time was that a shadow had quietly returned to town, observing from a hidden corner, recording his every move. A shadow he couldn't even imagine. The phantom had returned. Alex Carter stood silently beneath the shade of an old tree, his tall, solid figure unchanged from the days when he was a feared sniper. His cold eyes carefully watched Ethan's every move, like a hunter patiently waiting for the perfect moment to deliver the final blow. No one saw him appear. That was the most terrifying part. The man known as the Phantom was a legend for his ability to disappear and appear like a ghost, leaving no trace. One thing was certain. When the Phantom appeared, the enemy would never know peace. In the following days, his mysterious presence began to exert invisible pressure on the Brooks family's tightly knit network of power. First came photographs and confidential files about Richard Brooks's corruption and wrongdoing, suddenly appearing on the desks of town council members and local journalists. Cases that had seemingly been forgotten were suddenly revived, causing a stir among the public. But it didn't stop there. Mysterious incidents began happening around Ethan and his friends. One morning, Ethan discovered his prized car had been broken into, with dozens of photos inside, clearly documenting the violent actions he had taken against Maya. Jake and David were horrified to find their social media accounts had been hacked, exposing mocking and threatening posts they had written quickly, damaging their families' reputations. Ethan began to feel uneasy. He couldn't understand what was happening. From a man who was absolutely confident, Ethan was slowly becoming paranoid and extremely tense. His once secure world was now shaking, thrown into chaos by an unseen enemy he couldn't grasp. Meanwhile, Mayor Brooks also began to feel the crushing pressure from public opinion. His closest allies suddenly became cautious, avoiding him, no longer fully trusting him as they had before. Even some key figures in the town council publicly expressed doubts about his leadership and ethics, something that no one would have dared to suggest before. In his private office, Richard Brooks slammed his hand on the desk, his face now filled with anxiety and rage. "What is this? Who dares do this to me? It can't be a little girl or her mother." The assistant bowed his head in fear, muttering, "Sir, no one knows who's behind this, but they say Alex Carter, the Phantom, has returned to town." Brooks's face turned pale for a moment. He had never imagined that name would come up again. He knew all about the legend of the Phantom from his youth, when Carter had stirred up the entire military world with his classified missions. For a man like that to show up in this small town, it was like a nightmare becoming reality. At the same time, in a small cafe near the school, Alex Carter sat quietly across from an old friend, Marcus Reed, a former U.S. Army intelligence officer. Reed studied him carefully, finally speaking. "What are you planning to do next, Alex? The Brooks family isn't easily defeated." The Phantom took a sip of his coffee, his gaze as cold as steel, his voice low and decisive. "I've spent my life fighting those who think they can stand above the law. The Brooks family will pay for this. But first, I want them to know what fear feels like, just like what they did to my daughter and Laura." Marcus Reed shuddered slightly upon hearing that cold voice. He knew his old friend well enough to understand that once Carter made up his mind, nothing could stop him. Life in the small town of Riverview began to change dramatically. Public opinion shifted, and those who had once feared the Brooks family slowly began to find their courage. People started to believe that finally someone had stepped up to face the underground force that had controlled the town for so long. And in that small room where Maya sat beside her mother, she suddenly felt an unfamiliar warmth and confidence swell inside her. Though she had yet to meet her father, she knew he was out there, quiet, determined, and ready to do whatever it took to protect his family. That man was no longer just a distant legend. He had returned, ready to face down those who had caused his daughter and the woman he loved the most to suffer, because when the Phantom returned, everyone knew that justice would be served cold and decisive. The following days saw Riverview becoming a battleground for the truth. As news of the Brooks family's corruption spread, the townspeople began to rally together, supporting Maya and her mother. Maya felt the shift in the air. People were starting to stand up. They were tired of being silenced by fear. It was a new dawn. That evening, as the sun set over the town, a community meeting was held. Residents gathered in the town square, their voices joining together in solidarity. Maya stood before them, her heart pounding but her spirit unwavering. We can no longer allow the Brooks family to control our lives. We deserve justice and respect. The crowd erupted in applause, their support giving Maya the strength she needed. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in his room, frustration boiling inside him. He had always been the one in control, and now everything was slipping away. He couldn't accept that a girl he had bullied was now rallying the town against him. He needed a plan, and he needed it fast, but every time he tried to act, he felt an invisible hand guiding every move of the Phantom, preventing him from regaining control. As the weeks passed, the pressure on the Brooks family intensified. Richard Brooks, cornered and desperate, reached out to his political allies, trying to salvage his reputation. But the more he tried to cover up the truth, the more it seemed to unravel. Meanwhile, Alex Carter remained a ghost, a looming presence, in the shadows, always watching over Maya. One night, as Maya sat in her room studying, she heard a soft knock at the door. It was her mother. "Sweetheart, can we talk?" Laura asked, her voice filled with concern. Maya nodded, setting her books aside. "What is it, Mom?" Laura took a deep breath, her expression serious. "I want you to be more careful. The Brooks family is desperate, and desperate people do desperate things." Maya's heart sank. "Are you saying they might try to hurt us again?" Laura nodded, worry etched on her face. "We have to stay vigilant. Just because your father is here doesn't mean they won't try to retaliate." Maya understood the gravity of their situation, but she refused to live in fear. "Mom, we can't hide forever. We have to stand our ground. If we let them intimidate us, they win." Laura looked at her daughter, pride swelling in her chest. "You're right, Maya. You're so strong, just like your father. We will get through this together." The next day, as the community continued to unite against the Brooks family, Ethan found himself increasingly isolated. His friends began to distance themselves, fearing the backlash from the townspeople. Rumors of his family's illegal dealings spread like wildfire, and soon the media caught wind of the story. Reporters lined the streets, eager to uncover the truth. Ethan tried to retaliate, but every move he made seemed to backfire, drawing more attention to him and his family. He felt trapped, like a cornered animal. In a moment of desperation, he decided to confront Maya directly. He found her in the school courtyard, surrounded by friends and supporters. "Hey, scholarship girl," he called out, forcing a smile that failed to mask his anger. "Still pretending to be a hero, you think you're going to win this?" Maya stood tall, her confidence unshaken. "This isn't just about me, Ethan. It's about standing up for what's right. You can't intimidate us anymore." Ethan's frustration boiled over. "You think your father can protect you? He's just a ghost." Maya felt a surge of defiance. "If my father is a ghost, then maybe it's time for you to realize that the real monster is standing right in front of you." The tension in the air thickened as the crowd around them grew silent, watching the confrontation unfold. Maya's words echoed, striking a chord with those who had suffered under the Brooks family's reign. Ethan's expression twisted in anger, but deep down, he felt the tide turning against him. As the weeks rolled on, the investigation into the Brooks family's activities escalated, and soon police were involved. Maya and her mother watched from the sidelines as Richard Brooks was arrested, the news flashing across every screen in town. With the Brooks family finally facing justice, Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her. She knew this victory was not just for her family, but for everyone who had suffered at their hands. And as she stood beside her mother, watching the chaos unfold, She felt a sense of pride in the strength they had shown together. In the midst of all the turmoil, Alex Carter remained a silent guardian, proud of the daughter he had missed for so long. He knew the fight was far from over, but for the first time in years, he felt hope blooming within him. The bonds of family had proven stronger than the forces that sought to tear them apart. As the sun set over Riverview, Maya stood at the edge of the town square, looking out at the community that had rallied behind her. She knew that the fight for justice and equality was ongoing, but she felt empowered, knowing she had the strength of her father and the love of her mother by her side. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united as a family, ready to confront the ghosts of their past and build a brighter future. And with that thought, Maya took a deep breath, ready to step into the next chapter of her life, confident that no matter what, she would never be alone. This was just the beginning of their story, a story of resilience, courage, and the unbreakable bonds of family. As the lights of Riverview twinkled in the distance, Maya smiled, knowing that they had emerged stronger than ever, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The Phantom may have been a legend, but he was also a father. And together, they would create a legacy that would never be forgotten.